So in this video, I thought I would take the time at the end of the year now and what a year it's been, to dispel some spiritual misunderstandings or myths. So this video is going to be a bit all over the place because I'm going to talk about different topics. But they're going to be important topics, and I'm going to try to make it as understandable as possible. So the first myth or spiritual concept I'm going to talk about is selfless service. And this is something that many teachers talk about and preach and recommend. And I'm certainly not saying it's a bad idea, but I'm saying it's kind of misunderstood or not precise, because you can set it up against acting on your highest excitement. What should you do? Should you be of selfless service, or should you act on your highest excitement? Because the selfless service thing can very easily be misunderstood by a lot of people who are well-meaning and good people, and they can sacrifice themselves and their true path because they believe they should be doing, good stuff in the world or selfless service. So it's not really the most efficient way. It's a good thing, and many people will benefit from doing it, and it's not a bad thing at all. But it's not really the most efficient way. The most efficient way is always to act on your highest excitement with zero insistence on the outcome, which kind of mimics, or a kind of, it's similar to selfless service, but it's not quite the same. And there is a distinct difference, because selfless service, the concept of selfless service, contains a trap in which people can start to subtly believe that they're good if they do. I mean, the whole point of selfless service is it's supposed to be selfless, right? You're not doing it with any expectations of anything. But that's not always easy. There can be subtle stuff going on in your mind that, if you do this, you're a good person, or these things can go unnoticed. So you're actually building up an ego, or a subtle spiritual ego, instead of moving forward. Or there are those people who basically use it as an excuse, just, okay, if I do all these good deeds, if I help out here and there and do all these things, that means I'm a good person. But they're not really looking at themselves or at the stuff that they have repressed. So they're using selfless service as a way to escape facing themselves. And these are traps that are contained in that concept. But they are not contained in the concept of acting on your highest excitement to the best of your ability, with zero insistence on the outcome. Because then you're doing exactly what you're supposed to doing, and you're not attaching any ego into it, because you don't have any expectations of any returns. So it's similar to selfless service, but it's more precise and more direct, and it never takes you off your right path, and it cannot trap you, unless, of course, anything can trap you if you want it to, kind of, but it's easier to get trapped in the selfless service concept because of the two traps I talked about before. It's not so easy to be trapped in the act on your highest excitement concept, because you can do it if you believe that your highest excitement is something that it's not. For example, if you don't have self-honesty to distinguish that or discern that is one way you can be trapped in that concept too. But I think, in my view, in my experience, it's easier to be trapped in the selfless service thing. It's easier to build up a subtle spiritual ego in that concept too. So I recommend, as always, acting on your highest excitement, and that might be, that might happen that you will do selfless service as part of that concept or part of that path. But if you're doing selfless service for the sake of selfless service, it's not really selfless anymore, is it? Because you're doing it because it is selfless service. So that's another subtle trap. It's many traps you can walk into when you start to, try to live out these concepts that are being taught from higher levels. But in my view, at least, the acting on your highest excitement formula is the best and most precise and contains the least possibility of being trapped in some kind of way. Which brings us to the next concept, which is the trap of seeking enlightenment. And this is the biggest trap there is, in my view, in my experience, which I went into for many years too. Actually, most of my life I was trapped in that kind of loop. A lot of teachers, they will tell you that, you should keep doing all these exercises and doing all these things and efforts and, all these meditations and whatnot. And it can easily lead to the idea that if at the end of this you will get enlightened somehow. But again, the problem is, and I'm not saying these teachers are bad for saying this, many of them don't know better, or maybe they, that's just what they did, or, you never know what the reason behind these teachings are, but they are usually well-meaning teachers. But I haven't really looked into it, at least not the way I have, because I spent so many years doing exactly all these things. And all sorts of other things too, just, desperately trying to get enlightened and waiting for it to happen, and spent many years waiting, just thinking that, okay, now I've done everything I can, it just has to come by itself at some point. I just have to integrate or wait. But the problem is, when you're doing all these things, you put a subtle condition on everything you do, and that is the goal of enlightenment. I talked about this in other videos too, but I'm going to elaborate more on it here. Because when you act on your highest excitement with zero insistence on the outcome, that means zero insistence on the outcome. And if you're doing meditations and all sorts of spiritual stuff with the subtle, or not even subtle, but the goal of getting enlightened, you've already put a condition on something, on your whole life basically, on everything you do. Which means that you're not really following the quickest and best and most effortless and, least resistance path to actually getting at least close to enlightenment. Because, statistically, almost nobody gets enlightened. Almost nobody. If you look at this statistically, there are very, very few people in history who actually reach those levels. And today it's a bit more than maybe what it has been in the past because of the end times we're living in. But still, it's very few people. Of the 7+ billion people in the world, it's like maybe, it's not even 1,000 people, I think. It's very few people who are actually reached the higher levels of enlightenment. So statistically, you have a slim chance. And this is, I'm talking now from the old paradigm as things have been. If there is, or when there is, an event or a mass consciousness upgrade or whatever is going to happen in the, in the coming times, this can all change. All bets are basically off if this happens. I'm not talking about how it will be in the future. I'm talking about how it has been and still is to this day. Getting enlightenment is extremely rare. And a lot of people are wasting their lives seeking enlightenment. That sounds harsh, but it's the truth. They're doing all sorts of stuff, and they believe that it's, down the line they will get enlightened because the teacher said so, or they read it in a book. But that's not really the best way to look at it, or the best approach in life. It's a good idea in the beginning when you start to search. You're very honest about it. You're very earnest in yourself about your goal, and it's no problem. It's completely okay to say to yourself, "My goal is enlightenment. That's what I want in life. I'm putting enlightenment up there as, the top of my pyramid, my whole life will now be organized towards that goal. You can very earnestly and honestly, tell your higher mind that and dedicate yourself to that. But then it's very good to forget about it. You set the goal one time, and then you sort of forget about it. You allow life and the higher mind to guide you through whatever needs to happen. But you don't think about only enlightenment all the time. Like, and you definitely don't do all sorts of stuff just because you want enlightenment. The focus can become so rigid onto that goal that you neglect a lot of other stuff in life, which I have done. I had to catch up on many things in a very strange way, which I cannot go into detail about, but anyway, because the whole idea of having enlightenment as the goal in life, it can be a good idea if you completely forget about it, like I said, because it's much better to have a goal that's much more tangible and actually a thing you can practice every waking hour at every day. And that goal is unconditional love. And the paradox is, if you seek or practice unconditional love, you're actually building the foundation, which is a springboard in which you can reach enlightenment. You have to reach the plateau level of unconditional love first anyway. So why not practice that? Why not, go for that goal instead of the highest goal? Because going for the highest goal of enlightenment can easily distract you or mislead you from actually becoming unconditionally loving. You can become arrogant by having that goal. You can look down on people who are not seeking that goal. You can have all sorts of subtle ego traps. So the best goal for a spiritual seeker is unconditional love. It's not enlightenment. You should forget about the whole enlightenment thing, basically. It's okay to know about it, but you should forget about it having it as your life goal, because you cannot practice enlightenment. How can you practice it? Many teachers claim you can. You can pretend, you can sit and meditate and pretend that you're, all spacious and all that is, and you're one with everything. But that's basically stuff that goes on in your mind, in your separate mind anyway, in your head. Yes, you can have satoris and experiences. That's not what I'm talking about. That's no problem. That's okay to have. But practicing enlightenment is not really possible, because it's beyond what you can understand in the mind that practices anyway. So it's a waste of time in many ways to sit around and doing all these exercises where you sort of try to be enlightened, try to see things that way, try to expand your mind or something. Because, you cannot do that really. It's not up to your ego to go beyond your ego. It's not up to your limited mind to experience no mind or beyond the mind. But it is up to you as an incarnate being to reach unconditional love, which is something everybody can do. This is possible and reachable for absolutely everybody. And I'm talking about the 500 levels on the scale of consciousness, the 500 and more specifically the level 540 and above. 540 is like a plateau level, and you will definitely notice when you reach that level, because you will have Kundalini, most likely at least, you will have Kundalini experiences and all sorts of weird stuff that maybe you read about in yogic books or something that you didn't even think were possible. It's gonna happen when you reach those kind of levels, and you will also notice that people look at you differently, like something is going on. But anyway, unconditional love is possible to practice every day, every waking hour, which means you will get better at it. It's not really a skill in that sense, but it kind of is a skill too. It's definitely something you can get better at, and it's easy. All you have to do is be very alert and observing your own mind and your own inner reactions to anything that happens. And if there is any judgment, which is basically the opposite of unconditional love, then you just observe that judgment. You take note of the judgment. You don't judge the judgment. You don't try to repress the judgment. You just accept it and observe it as what it is, a judgment. And then by doing that, you sort of then it will let go of itself. It will leave. And then you have practiced, unconditional love for that one moment. And then you just repeat. Then you have proof of concept that felt pretty good. It feels better to let go of the judgment than actually judging and living out the judgment in the world. So now you have a proof of concept, and then you just repeat that process as many times as needed until you reach unconditional love. That might take years, it might take who knows, but that's the whole process. You just observe whatever comes up of negativity or judgments in your mind about yourself, about the world, about people, whatever. So it's very simple, it's very super easy to do, and you can do it all the time, all day, and you don't need to do anything specific. You don't need to you can just go about your day, do your job or whatever you do. And it's a practice that you can do continuously every day, and you get better at it every day. You will notice how your life is changing because of it. Over a little bit time, you will see that you become less judgmental because you have already caught so many judgments in the act, basically, that you become skilled at it, and you become much more alert to what's going on in yourself. And this, gives you a very simple path up the scale of consciousness, which will eventually reach a plateau level in the 500s, higher 500s, in which you have become unconditionally loving, which you have opened your heart chakra to a large degree, basically way above what most people at this time have achieved. And this is also the whole point of this third density realm, is to work on unconditional love. So then you're doing it as it's supposed to be done, basically. If you're seeking enlightenment and that's your whole focus, and you forget about unconditional love, you just focus on all the cosmic consciousness and expanding your consciousness and all these weird things that people teach, then you're kind of wasting your time, So it's up to you what you think is the best goal. But for me, it's very obvious. I always had unconditional love as a goal, even though I also had like a dual goal situation. I had enlightenment as a goal, but also unconditional love as a goal. So that is possible too. You can have both. But when it comes to practicing, it's a waste of time to practice enlightenment exercises, because what you need to practice is unconditional love, which builds the foundation. When the foundation of unconditional love has been put in place, that can lead to even higher levels of consciousness, which will be non-duality and enlightenment. So that is my New Year's resolution, is to become even better at that, practicing unconditional love, because it can actually be more easy in the beginning than it is after a while, because it becomes more and more subtle. The judgments or whatever becomes more and more subtle. The negative ego or collective ego, the negative mind, is always trying to find ways to hold you back and trap you, and it's a subtle process which becomes just more and more subtle until it's finished, basically. So it's something that you have to continually practice, even as you are enlightened. I believe you have to still be focused on it, even though it's kind of locked in at that point. But this is something I don't see too many teachers talk about. I mean, I see a lot of enlightened people. They talk about enlightenment and all the the states of enlightenment, and how it feels, or how they experience life in non-duality. But that's okay. But we already have tons of books and videos about that subject, and it's not really practical for most seekers who just fall into the illusion of thinking that, okay, I can practice that, I can become like that, and then they just skip the whole unconditional love thing. And then you have many teachers who talk about selfless service, which is a way of, reaching unconditional love if you do it correctly, if you do it without falling into all the subtle traps that comes with that concept. So the quickest way to unconditional love, and the 500 levels and 540 as the plateau level, is to follow the formula of Bashar, which is to act on your highest excitement with zero insistence on the outcome. You don't need, if you do that, you don't need selfless service at all, because you will be doing exactly what you need to do when you need to do it, and you will be in selfless service all the time, both to yourself and to others. If you actually act on your highest excitement and you follow that formula, you will be automatically, the concept of selfless service is baked into that formula, into that concept. So you don't need an extra concept. You just need to follow that formula, and then you will be doing all the service you need to do. And you will be doing it selflessly, because by definition you're doing it with zero insistence on any outcome, including, fruits of your actions to yourself. So that is the quickest way to unconditional love. But if you want an additional, practice, because sometimes, life is not always too exciting. You're following your highest excitement, but you will also have a routine life, a day-to-day job many times, So when Bashar talks about that concept, he makes it sound like you're going to have this amazing trip, but yes, maybe that will happen more and more in the future when more people do this, and we all combine into more of higher levels together. But as far as my life has been, it's been periods with a lot of excitement and massive things happening, and moving quickly, and then it's been many years of integration and not so many things happening and not so much excitement to act on, really. But what you can always do when you don't have something that's super exciting to act on necessarily, even though you always try to act on your excitement, even in small things like what to shop for dinner and what these things, it goes to every detail, both big and small choices. But it's also good to have the practice of unconditional love on the side, kind of. So when there's nothing too much exciting to act upon, you can practice unconditional love in every moment, every day, with every people, all the people you meet, or basically all the time. So when you have those two things down, you're on the path to unconditional love, which you, again, can lead to enlightenment if you're meant to be enlightened. Not all people are meant to be enlightened. Reaching unconditional love is enough to sort of graduate from this third density realm anyway. But some people become enlightened because they will be gurus and teachers for humanity. So, that's the biggest myth or biggest mistake I see in many spiritual seekers, is one thing is the selfless service mistakes or traps, and then you have the whole getting obsessed with enlightenment as a big goal in life, neglecting everything else, or a lot of other things, regular life things, and also neglecting actually being unconditionally loving. So that there's something to think about at the end of in the festive season, even though it's been kind of amputated by the whole virus craziness. But I'm hoping that next year we'll see some clarity, or some, that things will start to ease up a little bit, and we are probably in for a bumpy ride for a while more, but at least I would think we will start to see more positive signs coming next year. I'm not exactly sure when or how, but I don't know. Everything is very chaotic right now. It's almost impossible to know what's really going on behind the scenes, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Today is supposed to be the big, mass meditation. I'm suggesting everybody who listen to this partake in this meditation as we, have all these planetary alignments and the end of the start of a new age of the Aquarius and whatnot. I mean, some channelers have promised big things are supposed to happen, basically tomorrow or today or on this date. And some people have not said so much is going to happen. I don't know, I have no clue. I mean, I'm just waiting and seeing what's going to happen. I have no idea. But I'm going to partake in the meditation at least, and it's going to be a massive global meditation, and I suggest that everybody tries to partake in it. You can find more information about this meditation if you search for the Cobra blog post 2012 or something it's called. Just search for Cobra 2012 and you find his blog, and then you'll find information about time zones and what to do when you meditate. So this is a sort of an end of the year wrap up for me. I will be making more videos whenever I have something to say, and but maybe not so often, maybe not every week at least, because it all depends on what I feel inspired to do. But so I wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.